All right, ladies and gentlemen, so as you may know, WB Games Montreal, the creators of Gotham Knights, that game comes out in 2021, but that is not the only game they're working on. They are, in fact, working on two games. I have Alex Podcast now here with me. Check him out in the description below. Fantastic YouTuber, and definitely make sure you're subscribed to his channel. Alex, thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It's honestly a pleasure. We had a lot of fun last time, and you picked a really good topic. I'm excited for this.
Absolutely, me too. Let's dive right into it. So I think there's two parts of this, right? One is, what do we want them to be making? In other words, if we were in charge of the game, what would they be making? And then there's the other part of it, which is maybe more realistic of what we think they're actually making. So let's first talk about what we want the game to be. And before we can delve into that, we have to discuss the details of what we know about the game. So we know it's a AAA game, so it's going to be a full-fledged release. And we also know that there are multiplayer components to it. Of course, the same can be said of Gotham Knights, so that doesn't mean that it's going to be an MMORPG or something, but we just know from job postings that there are some online aspects to the game. The extent of that, we don't really know. And we know it's a new IP, so we know it's not Arkham, let's say, or we know it's not whatever, some other previous IP that has already been done. And we know it's a DC IP, so we know it's based on a DC property and character. So Alex, I'm very curious to know, if you're in charge of WB Games Montreal, what is the second game that they're working on? And then I'll give you my pitch for what I think the game should be.
Sweet. So, I mean, all right, it is tough, and I think because these two kind of will like blend together, I think what it probably is, or what I would also want, and I think it goes along with what they should probably do, I want a single, like a story-driven, like a character-driven thing, and I'm not saying that's not what Gotham Knights is, right? I think everybody's kind of collectively on board with, like, let's give this thing a chance. It's okay if we don't like this. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like what Gotham Knights looks like. That's, for me, that's always been completely fine, but I'm going to give it a shot. With that being said, I don't know if I would do a back-to-back, right? There's no way the other team is working on, like, a Gotham Knights 2. I don't know of any like video game publisher or developer out there that's had two different teams, but they're working on the same, the same franchise. With that being said, I would like, and I've even said this, I think, in some of my own videos, I would like a Justice League or even like an extended world to start to be put together in this game. It's what I always kind of wanted, and what they hinted at a lot in Arkham Knight, right? So we knew Superman, and they could have gone that direction, and I guess kind of they are, right, with Suicide Squad. So I would like to see that in this one, where there's some world building, because I think they did a good job of building Arkham in the in that kind of setting in all three, or even four if you count Origins, right? So I want to see that in Gotham Knights. I want to see, okay, well, we know Robin has used the power, right? He's tapped into the satellite. So the Justice League does exist. That's pretty much confirmed. I'd like to, I don't know if I want to see them, but I feel like I've always said I want Wonder Woman. I know Superman obviously is a really, really big one. I'm sure a lot of people would probably say that. I want a standalone, whether it's Flash, Wonder Woman, Superman. I think that's the path that they should go. I would put it in the Gotham Knights, which is, to your second part, like you said, I think that's probably what they will do too, which we'll talk about later. But I would personally like Wonder Woman, not even to tie it into the fact that the movies, obviously are booming and Gal Gadot and stuff, but think, just having a girl, right? If they want to push a diversity kind of thing, which there's nothing wrong with that, do that. It's a different kind of character, right? It's still in the realm that a lot of people know who she is, but how often have we actually seen, a standalone Wonder Woman? Same reason for like a Green Lantern or something like that. Superman, obviously, that's something, but I don't know if that's what they would do. So I would personally say Wonder Woman. I would say put it in the Gotham Knights world. It could be a prequel to it. It could be a sequel, but just you need to start, and this again goes to the second part, you need to start world building. If this is a brand new franchise with a brand new world, this can't be a one and done, which is why Rocksteady's whole thing is very confusing to me, right? Because it kind of ruins the whole synchronization thing. So that's I think what I would go for.
A Wonder Woman game would be so cool. I am totally on board for that. Can you imagine, like, the game starts, you're on Themyscira, you're playing as Diana when she's like 11, and you train as an Amazonian. That would be such a cool game. And then you go out into the world, you fight Cheetah. Here's the other thing that you think about with a Wonder Woman game is that Batman, one of the reasons he's so popular is because there is so much mainstream fervor for that character and so many interpretations of the character. Like, you have Batman Arkham, you have Batman the Animated Series, you have live action movies, you have 1989 Batman, you have The Dark Knight. Like, there's so many different things to latch onto, so many different interpretations of these characters. That's why Batman and the Joker and other characters like that are so popular, because not only are they have content that is made about them, movies and otherwise, but also there's a new interpretation for each generation, right? Like for our generation, for you and I, it was The Dark Knight, right, when we were growing up. But then if you go back to other generations, like our parents, they were like, oh, Batman 1989, we all watched that over and over again, we've seen it a million times, whatever. It's the same way with me and The Dark Knight. And you just go to think, if Wonder Woman had that same level of investment, like maybe we really would basically fans on a general level would regard her in the same way they do Batman in terms of popularity. And the fact of it is, we've never really seen a good interpretation of Cheetah. We've never really seen a good interpretation of any Wonder Woman character, frankly, before the movie, which only came out in 2017. So anyway, okay, back to my pitch for the game. That was a bit of an aside. My idea of a game for WB Games Montreal is actually a standalone Batman non-Arkham game that is connected to the Gotham Knights universe. So, what do I mean by that? Well, we know that Batman is dead in Gotham Knights. They have said repeatedly that he is dead, and it's like, okay, that's fine. I actually believe them. I think the reason they're saying that is to level expectations, and that it would be undermining the entire pitch of Gotham Knights, which is the Bat family coming into the fore in the spotlight. If you remove Batman from that, you kind of have to keep him out. Otherwise, the spotlight immediately, as soon as Batman arrives, the spotlight is off the Bat family and on Batman, right? And then you've undermined the entire design philosophy of the game, which is that it is putting a spotlight on the sidekicks and making the sidekicks the heroes and the main characters, which I love that idea. So I'm totally fine with that, and I actually kind of agree with their strategy to not include him, even though obviously as a fan, I do want him to be in the game. But just on a surface level, the decision that they made makes a lot of sense. So here's my idea for the Batman game is, okay, Batman's dead in Gotham Knights. How did he die? Right? Following the events leading up to that, and also getting a better understanding of who these characters are and who they were. In other words, in Gotham Knights, if we jump into it, Batgirl and Nightwing are in a relationship. Then in the prequel game, which is the standalone Batman game, and when I say standalone Batman, the Bat family is present. And that's the other way that this game could really evolve what we've seen with Batman games, because all four of the Batman Arkham games are not Bat family games. Even though the Bat family is in Arkham Knight, I wouldn't say that they play a particularly large role. They certainly don't in Arkham City or Asylum or Origins, right? So a Batman game where it is truly like an episode of the animated series where all of the Bat family is around him, and then we get to learn more about the characters that we see in Gotham Knights. We go into Gotham Knights, and then we have a further understanding of who these characters are, where they're at, where they come from, and we got to see how they interacted with this world's Batman. Because one of the problems that this game will have is that even though we as fans love Batman, we don't love this Batman. We don't love WB Montreal's Gotham Knights Batman because we've seen 5 seconds of him. All we've seen is him come on the TV and say, I'm dead. So we don't have any connection to him. It's not like it's Arkham Batman and we're like, oh, we're thinking back on all these memorable moments that we had with him or whatever. Or, we have this moment where Batman saved Barbara Gordon, but Scarecrow pushed her off the skyscraper and, oh, he's such a great hero. Or, oh, he told the Joker that he would have saved him at the end of Arkham City. And he's actually, a great guy and really genuinely does hold to his moral code and is truly consistent with it. So we have those connections where like, wow, we love Batman in the Arkham games. We love Batman in the animated series. We don't have those moments with Batman in this game. And I think that it is important, even if you take the spotlight off of Batman, there has to be some reverence of why does the Bat family want to follow Batman? Why do they look up to him as this hero? And the reason is because he's morally just. He is incredibly driven, kind, and caring, and just kind of, he's a bit aloof and difficult to get into and understand from an outsider's perspective, but on the inside he's genuinely a very kind-hearted person who's just damaged and broken. But that is who Bruce Wayne is. But the fact of it is, we haven't gotten a chance to see those positive aspects of his character in this universe. So in this Gotham Knights standalone Batman game, which I want to play kind of like an Arkham game, but increase the dual play, maybe even have like quad play where you can switch between Batman, Nightwing, Batgirl, and then basically have more traditional Arkham style combat, not solely from Arkham, but certainly maybe a bit different than Gotham Knights. Gotham Knights combat is probably, I would say, more in line with Marvel's Avengers direction than Batman Arkham, which is not an insult to them. It's just an observation of the gameplay general outline of what they're going for. And I would love to see a truly built from the ground up Batman game. And I'll end on this note too. WB Games Montreal was put in a really difficult position when they made Arkham Origins because you are following in the footsteps of Rocksteady, and not only that, it's very difficult to make a game that works within that universe without messing up the continuity, right? A lot of the negative feedback they got for that game was because, oh, you mess with this part of the continuity, or you mess this up, or you mess that up, or why did you do this? And them being in their own universe, building their own WB Games Montreal extended universe, just as Rocksteady is doing. So one thing that I thought that this game would do before they announced Gotham Knights was that they would be building this broad DC video games universe. That would have been cool, but I actually like this idea of basically having, okay, Rocksteady has their own universe where Suicide Squad is connected to Batman Arkham, and that's great. Like, I love that. I hope in Suicide Squad that game is jam-packed full of Batman Arkham Easter eggs. I would love nothing more than that. And allusions, references. Hopefully Killer Croc shows up in it. Like, that would be so cool. If we actually got to see that direct connection between Batman Arkham and the Suicide Squad game. And I think that the pitch for this game my pitch is exactly that, is a Arkham-style Batman game that is in the Gotham Knights universe. And then the great thing about that game, too, if it is what they're doing, is that we can play that game and then it enriches our experience of Gotham Knights even after we've played it. It adds further context to be like, oh, this is why the Bat family is so driven to maintain Batman's image and legacy in Gotham. And they want him to be revered because they genuinely care about him and they had these great connections, and you show those character moments in the game. So that's my pitch. Let's now delve into what we actually think they're doing, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think they're actually doing that. I would love if they were making a Batman game. Wonder Woman is actually a really, really good prediction. I think that is a very real possibility, especially considering the fact that the movie's in development. If there's anything we know about Warner Brothers, and sorry, I know I'm rambling, I'll end on this. If there's anything we know about Warner Brothers, it's that they do love to tie game releases with tentpole films. They just love to do that. That's even Gotham Knights is coming out around the time that the Batman movie is supposed to come out, except before it was delayed, So now here's the other thing. A lot of people have thrown out The Flash. A lot of people have thrown out Green Arrow. Do you think that has any reasonable possibility of happening, Alex?
Yeah, so, well, firstly, I do want to say I really do like your idea, and I think that even like a best of both worlds, I agree. I don't think that would be really cool. I don't know if they would go down that path. DLC, though, almost sounds perfect for what you said, for especially the prequel stuff leading into whether he's dead or not dead, okay, whether we want to believe that,
right,
or whether, whatever happens in Gotham Knights happens. If you did a short 2 to 3 hour DLC, if you want season pass, or just literally you pay for this and that's all we give you, and you give us, a couple days or, a couple weeks of Batman leading into that, I think that would be a perfect DLC. It's still, like you said, it would not take away from what Gotham Knights is doing. So I think that would be, a best of both worlds kind of thing. But yeah, I think, well, it's tough because when, like you said, if we're talking about what they're actually going to do, I don't know if we're at the point yet where they would go like Green Arrow. I guess he's big enough, but I don't know if he's big enough to center an entire game, around him. I think you got to think with these guys, at least, that they're going to go for the most recognized. That's why, to me, like Wonder Woman, I think she's perfect in the way, again, like she's very, very different. I think she's a really cool character in the first place. It lines up with the movies, but she's not like, I don't know, like a top two most obvious thing, because I think that's Batman and Superman. So I think I think Green Lantern could probably work. I think Flash absolutely would work. Aquaman would be I love water. I love all things water, like in games or in anything. So that would be insanely cool. I doubt that happens though either. The issue is, do they go down the path? And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Do they go down the path of Gotham Knights? You can compare it to Avengers. You cannot compare it. It doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter where they stand on it. There's no doubt, I think just factually, that they're going more towards, again, this kind of cooperative looter experience than they are the Arkham games. I really don't see how there's any arguing that. Same exact thing for Rocksteady. And we know, even by possible rumors and even what the Middle-earth games, the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, I feel like they're going to start leaning into it as well. So the question is, do they want to, and you said, there are a lot of indications that it'll be, again, a multiplayer game, or at least, multiplayer incorporated. So do they do that? Do they keep going? Now, again, I don't think it's a Gotham Knights 2. You don't do that. That would probably be this team, the one currently, working on Gotham Knights. I think a standalone game still would work. So a Wonder Woman game would still work, a Green Arrow game, a Green Lantern game, whatever. But I think, yeah, it's going to have heavy just how the game functions. I think it's going to feel a lot like what Gotham Knights is. There'll probably be similar fighting mechanics. There'll probably be gear mechanics. And again, I'm not saying if that's right or wrong. I would prefer no. I would prefer that's not the path I want to go down. But again, as you see, you really look at any studio. I think the biggest indicator is when you have a studio that's got 2 teams in it or more, unless you're like Insomniac, which does a lot of very different stuff. Oftentimes you will have games that at least feel, maybe use the same engine, but they have similar like mechanics. You can even look to Naughty Dog, right? Last of Us and Uncharted are very, very closely, linked. And again, unless you're Insomniac with Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that, those are all so different than like a Spider-Man. So I think they go down that. And again, I think Wonder Woman still fits. I think, again, what they need to do and what they probably will do, they are smart enough to do this, is you do, like you just said too, you have to world build. If you want to make your own world, totally cool. I'm actually, I like how you said Suicide Squad being part of the Arkham world. I like that. I don't like the planning of it all, though, because, again, there were so many rumors that everything was going to be connected, and now you have these guys. They're kind of like Lone Rangers. They're doing their own thing. They're making their own world, and nobody's following them. They haven't announced, if there's like a third studio out there that's making a Superman game, that maybe that's part of the world. That's
Right.
not out there. The Middle-earth team is still probably doing, Monolith. They're probably still doing Middle-earth. So the planning has been, I would say, actually pretty bad so far. So the second game needs to be in the Gotham Knights world. So your Batman thing, it is perfect if they did it. But that's what if it's a Justice League member, if it's whatever, they need to keep it in this world.
Here's the memo that I totally agree with everything that you said. Here's the main thing that I posted about recently, I think earlier this week, regarding Marvel's Avengers, is that I totally agree with your analysis that they're going a little bit more towards the looter shooter type of model with Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad than towards the Batman Arkham route. But I think that, as with anything in life, it's important to analyze what worked about what I'm doing. With my YouTube channel, it's important for me to analyze what works, what is my audience like, what has made me be able to get the amount of subscribers that I have, right? And then it's the same thing with Batman Arkham, DC video games. What has made DC games successful? The reality of it is the plot and the story and high quality gameplay is what really has made DC games have such a leg up over other games, Marvel games and other things like that. And now we see with Spider-Man PS4, they're back on that level. With Marvel's Avengers, I think that it was a pretty big misstep and it didn't work, right? It just wasn't very successful. So if you're anywhere near resembling Marvel's Avengers, that's not where you want to be. Wherever Marvel's Avengers is, you want to be 10 feet away from that. And that's my advice to WB Games Montreal. If there is anything that you feel like really has any similarities to Marvel's Avengers in any way, it has some of those loot 'em, shoot 'em aspects, you have to be very careful about that. I'm not saying to abandon them altogether, but I am saying that you need to be very cognizant of the fact that this is something that didn't work, and it was tried in this particular audience and market, right? It's already been tried with this audience with Marvel's Avengers, and it wasn't a huge success. It wasn't what people wanted to see. And when comparing that game, Marvel's Avengers, to Batman Arkham City, which game do you want to play, right? And that's the question is, which game are you going to be closer to? Batman Arkham City, or are you going to be closer to Marvel's Avengers? I think this game is somewhere in the middle, and my hope is that by the time it comes out, it is closer to Arkham City. Right. And when I say Arkham City, I mean not a clone of Arkham City, obviously. I mean in terms of the quality of the story, how fleshed out the narrative is, and also the gameplay, highly structured. Gameplay elements like in Arkham City when you're walking through the prison, walking through the gates of the city as Bruce Wayne, like those set pieces. You got to have moments like that. It can't just be, I'm driving around Gotham and I'm going from side mission to side mission. Like there's got to be some meat to it as well. And I'm confident that there will be in the game. And as I said, I think that I do not think Gotham Knights is Marvel's Avengers. I think it is somewhere perfectly between Marvel's Avengers and Batman Arkham, and my hope is that they just sway that a little bit further towards the Arkham direction. As for the other games, I really feel as though there's a strong possibility of The Flash. We do know that in the early, I think it was around 2011 area, they were working on a Flash game, that ultimately fell through. That is a game that I would love and could be quite successful, so that wouldn't surprise me at all if they did Flash. It also would not surprise me if they did Green Arrow, because Green Arrow would be pretty easy to do, relatively speaking, compared to some other heroes, certainly compared to Superman. I think we can pretty much safely wipe Superman off the list because the rumor on the street is that Rocksteady was denied from doing Superman. So if Rocksteady couldn't do them, then WB Montreal definitely won't be able to. So I actually think that Wonder Woman is highly, highly likely. So I think you're spot on there in terms of saying that would be a game that you would like to see. That is not unlikely. I think Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, Green Lantern does not seem likely to me. The Flash, those are probably my 3 main contenders. I was actually going to say Suicide Squad, but now Rocksteady's doing Suicide Squad. Go ahead, sorry.
Right, and you know a lot of history on both. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure wasn't Wonder Woman one of the games too that Warner Bros. Montreal was working on? That was one of their like multiple canceled projects.
I believe so.
Because,
so.
Like,
it might have been in super early
there's
development.
Rumors. Yeah, there's rumors like with Rockstar with Bully 2 that Bully 2 has been picked up and put down multiple times. Okay, so like it was in development, then they literally canceled it, but then a few years later they went back to it. Now I'm not saying that happens everywhere. Sometimes it stays dead, but I feel like this could be an example where it's like if they don't want to do Batman, right? They want to stay far away from that. You look at what they've done in the past, and Suicide Squad's been, a thing around, like you said. Suicide Squad's been around there. Wonder Woman, they've already done, like you even said with Flash. I would say same kind of premise, right? They already maybe had an idea. They're like, all right, well, we need something. Maybe we go back to that. So there's a little history, I would say, with gaming developers that's been done before.
Yep. Absolutely. And last question for you before we end the video. If you had to guess when this game will be revealed, when do you think, what do you think, what timetable are they looking at here to unveil the second game?
Man. So they broke their own system with this year, and I think that's because of the blank that went around the world. I feel like they go one at a time, and I feel like that's what they would have done. Suicide Squad, Kill a Justice League, I think was probably... All right, Rocksteady's had a game for 5 years, and they haven't even been working on this actually for 5 years. It's been much less, but we don't know what they've been doing, so maybe we just have to show it. I feel like some of it was actually brought upon by let's ease people because maybe people are a little worried of Rocksteady's dropping the ball. So I feel like they go one at a time. I've said numerous times I don't think we see Suicide Squad at all until after Gotham Knights comes out. So I would almost argue, do we do the same thing with Suicide Squad? Do we wait till that comes out? I would say like late 2021 at the absolute earliest, but honestly, I would not be surprised at all if it's a after Suicide Squad kind of thing. With that being said, it could come out, if they want to do it like every 2 years, Gotham Knights 2 years later, second game, then you do have to do it, reasonably quick. But I feel like they go one, generally, Warner Bros. In general doesn't announce their game, very early, right? They announce it and then it comes out. This year they broke that kind of on purpose. So, yeah, I think most likely I would bet on after Suicide Squad.
Well, and even with Gotham Knights, who's to say that they're not going... DC Fandom also is an event that never happened before. So with DC Fandom, they were kind of like, okay, WB, corporate, the bigwigs were like, okay, we're having this huge event where we're revealing stuff, and the WB Games, their hand is kind of forced also in lieu of...
Oh, yeah, it's like you have to do it.
You got to show stuff.
Go past DC Fandom without it.
We have DC Fandom, so you got to show something, and then I think that's why also Rocksteady, wow, super weird for 2022 to unveil their game, Again, when you look at the Batman Arkham games, they would announce and then they'd be like, yeah, this game comes out in 5 months. See you then. That's how they used to do it. It's just so crazy how everything has changed. That's also partially with them just blowing up to the extent that they have. Alex, thank you so much for joining me, man. Very excited to see when they unveil this game. I really am hopeful that we're going to now get into a cycle where there is a new DC game every year. I would love that. Because if we basically look at, okay, we have Gotham Knights in 2021, Suicide Squad in 2022, the third project, whether that be Batman, Flash, Green Arrow, as we just discussed, who knows, but that will be in 2023. And then hopefully by that point, WB Montreal is already churning after, that's 2 years after Gotham Knights came out. So then that team is working on another game. And then we get into a nice rhythm here where we have a new game every year, which is much better to occasionally get an Injustice game this decade. But otherwise, you get nothing. So, Alex, thank you again so much for joining. Everybody go check out his channel, subscribe. The link will be in the description below. Subscribe, ring the bell over on his channel, and also like the video if you enjoyed. Shout out to all of my elite members. Really appreciate everybody for supporting the channel. See you guys in the next video. Peace out.